My name is Ed Garner, President and CEO of Muskegon Area First, the countywide economic development agency, and also on the planning committee for the Martin Luther King annual Unity Breakfast held at Muskegon Community College. This year, we had an outstanding speaker for the Unity Breakfast, an outstanding gentleman named by the name of Wesley Hall, or Wes Hall, as he's more casually known, out of Los Angeles. Wes is an expert here in dealing with boys of color, among other things that we'll hear about today, and also has been working with the LA schools districts in there, working with boys of color, really trying to engage them and really looking at their talents and how to better use those. Wes is also a radio personality. We want to hear a little bit about that, and he's also an author too, and has written 2 books that we're going to talk a little bit about today. So welcome, Wes, to the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Wes, can you tell us just a little bit about your background, kind of maybe how you grew up, and as I mentioned, you were on radio and still on radio today, but you're also doing this consulting thing and working with boys of color. Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and what interests you in working in the field that you're in now?
Right, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Ed. I appreciate being on the show with you today. Starting out in radio, I was a radio personality for over 20 years, traveling around the country, Norfolk, Virginia, out in San Francisco on KDIA, 1310 KDIA. And that was my love. I thought I was going to be doing radio for the rest of my life. You know, you get bitten by the bug.
Right, and you run the radio contest at 8 years old, I believe.
Well,
right?
actually at 14 years old, they had a 50 words or less radio contest, and everybody in the city had to write in. You know, and so my little 50 words won. And from there, my friends would say, "Wes is going to be on the radio." And this is when I was young. And I remember even when I ran for student council back when I was about 15 years old too, up in middle school. I used to always, the kids used to say I used big words back then. And we're gonna run West, we're gonna run West for president. And we were in a predominantly white school, and I had been there 1 year, and my guys got together, man, they ran this campaign. And so when it was time to actually do my presentation, I remember I had my yellow leisure suit, you know, with the black pedaling shoes, you know, back in the
platform shoes.
No, these are those shiny, the shiny patent leather ones. And I took the mic. Everybody else stood behind the podium. I grabbed the mic and walked to the center of the stage and gave my presentation. And even today, I still walk to get a cordless mic or a lapel mic and do that. So started out doing that, and was on radio for, like I said, 20 plus years. And I was listening to Les Brown, motivational speaker Les Brown, wrote him a letter back in 1995, and to my amazement, he called me on the telephone. And it was, you know, when he called, I didn't recognize his voice, and I go by Wes, but he said, "Wesley, please." Yeah, I said, "This is Wes." He said, "No, Wesley, please." Now, I don't know about you, but I'm like, this is my phone. I've already told you, you know. And but something about the voice, and I said, "Okay, this is Wesley." He said, "Les Brown speaking." And man, I'm telling you what, if your hero has ever called you on the phone, it was that moment. And come to find out, our birthday's on the same day, February 17th, and he's got a twin brother named Wesley. And so that's really what launched me into motivational speaking.
Okay, he took you as a mentor,
as a mentor
to you?
Yep, and took me as a mentor, took me under his wing, and taught me motivational speaking.
Okay.
And from there, he had a quote that said, "You don't get out of life what you want, you get out of life who you are." So I hypothesized that and said, if you don't get out of life what you want, you get out of life who you are, then you are the money.
Okay.
And that's what led me to write my first book.
Super. So what interests you, though, in the educational arena, and particularly working with boys of youth or boys of color? What took you from radio to moving in that? So we went from radio to motivational speaking. You started writing books, but you had to somehow choose a focus area. So something you probably thought you could make a great impact in this community with.
What happened was I was doing motivational speaking. I just did a keynote presentation downtown New York. Denver, Phoenix, St. Louis. I was traveling around the country as a national keynote speaker. But I also said something, I don't know, something in my spirit said the kids need this word. And that's where I approached the superintendent. At that time, I had a relationship with Dr. John McKill in Omaha Public School System. And I talked to him about this idea of you are the money, and how could we use this to transform kids. And so primarily it was a bigger group of kids, but something resonated in me in terms of dealing with our boys of color.
Okay.
Because they are the ones that really express the greatest need. And so I piloted the program with a group of young men, and they got it. They got it immediately, and within about a few months, we were helping them recover credits. They were reduce their truancy and reduce their behavior problems, and actually help them graduate. So from there, the superintendent gave me 3 more schools, then more schools. Then the teachers were asking, well, how's he working? How's he doing that with the kids? And so I took one group of teachers, 50 teachers, and did a professional development training for them, and it went like fire throughout the district. And so from there I was training, hundreds of teachers. And so I ended up training like 2,500 teachers for that district. And even for Los Angeles now, I've trained over 3,000 teachers on success strategies for re-engaging disengaged students.
Right. So You Are the Money. This is the first book that you've written. I believe you published this in 1999.
That's
and then updated it most recently in, I think, 2007. And most people are familiar with the phrase "show me the money," from the one movie. But You Are the Money. What exactly is that? What exactly does that mean? What are you trying to get at with that when you say you are the money?
Well, basically, people see money as something external.
Okay.
They see a dollar bill, they see a $100 bill. They're fixated on something external. And that's why it's like the blue in the sky. It doesn't exist. It's an illusion. And that's why most people live their lives chasing after something and never really capturing it. My book was trying to show how self-development equals wealth development.
Okay.
It's who you are. It's what you bring. I try to give a simple analogy of a car. And you could take the wheels off of it, just strip it down to a piece of metal. And say, for instance, it's worth $5,000. Everything you add on to the car increases its value. So the same piece of metal with the right rims on it, with the right heat, engine, all the niceties in the car, the more you put on it, it could be $200,000. So the things you put on you, the things you put in you, the degrees or the amounts of information that you digest. For me as a speaker, I can walk into a room and not have any money in my pocket, but I can share 45 minutes of information and get a check. I have then taken and shown people how you translate natural gifts and talents into its monetary equivalent. You are the money really means that the mastery that you have in yourself, that you develop, is quantifiable. That matter of fact, when you take a look at the people who make the most money in America, are those who have developed their gift to the highest level. When you take a look at Mariah Carey, who's valued at maybe $500 million, look at her gift. Okay, and so the development of your natural gifts and talents is the money. Tiger Woods could go broke today and by next Friday be a multimillionaire. It's the gift. The swing is a little bit challenged nowadays, but nevertheless, it's the swing, it's the mental toughness that we bring to the table. And as we increase the levels, and there are some niche information, like You Are the Money, and my particular niche of information is even more quantifiable in terms of how much people pay for a unique idea. When you take a look at Facebook, you take a look at Yahoo, you take a look at Apple, you take a look at these unique ideas in the marketplace. Those are the money.
So self-development is wealth development.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So there's actually an experiment I think you did. There was one called sagging to suits, where I think you put some of these principles in action in particular school. Tell us a little bit about sagging to suits and how that initiative works.
Right, well, as most people know who've come into contact with kids who sag. And so I wanted to experience that myself, so I came to school sagging.
Okay. How did that turn out?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, the kids were like, Mr. West, you're not really sagging because your pants aren't down far enough. And I said, no, there's air here, son, so of course I'm sagging for Mr. West. But it really, the gist of it was the young African-American males who hadn't had a role model to show them how it's cool to be dressed. Up to that point, it was one of the most amazing things we discovered with the Sagging to Suits was when the kids first start transforming, we found that the first day they wore a suit, the other kids would tease them. Man, what you call a case when you go into church. After 30 days of wearing their suit, if they came to school without it, the kids would say, man, where's your suit? And on the other side, the girls were complimenting the boys.
Okay.
And we also found something else significant. Heretofore, when the young men would come into class, they would have to ask the teacher for help. When they began dressing up, the teachers start asking them, do they need help? So we found within Sagging to Suits that once the young men accepted this idea and began to get rewards based on the shift, then after a while, there was no incentive necessary from us because the incentive was the reward they were getting in public. Along with that, we found that the other men in the school and in the community began to donate clothes to the boys. Nonprofit organizations that heard about the boys began now to donate money to help the boys in their education. So the whole Sagging to Suits experience, first it was just me taking a look at this whole sagging thing and what is it about. But the transformation actually came from the You Are the Money curriculum that I developed with the boys, and that's where it has evolved. And now in Los Angeles, we're doing it at Crenshaw and Dorsey as other schools in LA now.
Super.
Yeah.
Now, you targeted it after boys, the Sagging to Suits, but I believe there are some other unintended consequences that may have came from that actually affected girls, isn't it? With this effort that you went through here and stuff. What happened with that?
Absolutely. What we found too is the girls that went through the process, because it's all revolving around the You Are the Money concept and natural gifts and talents. So even the girls were saying, this is a new formula. No one has told us that education equals money, that information is quantifiable, that I can take and gain control of my life by gaining control of the amount of information or increasing the amount of information. And so we found, and then there was another particular, we did a group with a group of young ladies. And what I found in being in that room with them is for many of them, it was the first time that they experienced fatherly, sheltering energy. It was amazing because I hadn't anticipated this. They came into contact with what they considered sheltering male energy, where heretofore it may have been where dad is absent, or they didn't have the sheltering impact of a fatherly figure. And the males who would go past the classroom, well, two things happened. One, the girls who had their clothes pulled down, or they start pulling them up. And along with that, dressed differently coming to class. And then what was most notable was when the boys would walk past and look in, the girls would look away. Almost as if, you see my dad here.
Okay.
So it was, you know what I mean? You see, so in other words, absent of that male sheltering image, the girls could have their clothes anyway and be talked to anyway. But once they came into contact with this male fatherly sheltering imagery, not only did they self-check themselves, they checked any other behavior that wasn't befitting of what they were going to experience when dad was there. So I thought that it was very interesting to observe that.
Great. So now you're still on the radio, and I believe you're doing is it a weekly?
A weekly program.
Program
every
still
Thursday.
based on the You Are the Money concepts,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So that's still, that effort is still going forward.
Right.
Now, in the midst of all this, recently you published a second book called Jack and the Sly Fox.
Yes.
And that one just recently came out. This is a children's book?
That's correct.
On this, and then what is Jack and the Sly Fox about? What is this one about?
I wanted to make the ideal palatable for young people, ages 10 through 15. because You Are the Money although it's classic in design in terms of the delivered information, it's skewed to probably more 17 and above. But for the 10-year-old, I wanted them to understand the gifts, the 7 gifts that you have inside of you. When you take a look at imagination, creation, voice, love, these gifts that they have inside them, and how do you use the gift of imagination, for instance? Most people don't understand that before this book enters into the physical realm, it vibrates in the imagination realm.
Okay.
So how do you, and so how do you bring something from the imagination realm onto the physical canvas? And so what I wanted to do with kids is to be able to help them see that your voice is a gift. All you have to, just like when they hear T.I. or Jay-Z or Beyonce, all those are different voices, but they don't even have to see the person and they know the voice. So their voice is just as unique and pronounced. So how do you use the gift of voice to be able now to make your way in the marketplace? So Jack and the Sly Fox is a mystical tale about Jack, who comes from this kingdom, and he's banned from the kingdom by his dad because he's so rebellious.
Okay.
And he's sent down to what would be Earth, and now, but before he leaves, the 3 powerful ones craft these special gifts and put them all inside of Jack.
Okay.
And so once Jack gets there, all he has to do is identify his gifts, and then his gifts will do the rest. But he encounters George the Sly Fox, and George can see his gifts inside of him. So George puts a dollar bill in front of him and says, "Chase this, and I can get it for you, and then I'll get you the money you want."
Okay.
You see what I mean? And so as a result, Jack is misled and thrown off from finding his gifts. And it takes his distant grandson, Michael actually, who discovers his inner gifts and goes on to be the wealthiest man in the world. And again, the book is really for kids to simplify and help them understand that you house a gift inside of you. Just like my voice, just like you use your natural gifts and talents and you put other things around them in terms of the technical skills that you put around your inner gift. We have an inner gift, and that gift, once fully developed, like when we just had the presentation this morning, and the room was so alive, it was so vibrant. And that comes from the mastery of my gift, understanding also how to resonate with the people in the audience and really feel. So I'm using my gift all the time, and I'm trying to teach kids through the book, Jack and the Sly Fox, 1, that they have a gift, 2, look for it and find it, and 3, with the nurturing, maturing, developing, and marketing of that gift, you can literally attract to you the life that you want to live.
Great. Sounds like 2 great books that you produced, and great success with both of those.
Thank you.
Now, you also act as a consultant for the Los Angeles, I believe, Unified School Districts, but you also consult with other schools as well. Tell me a little bit about your consulting work, since you're working with teachers and principals in schools, and how you're really trying to address this issue of dealing with boys of colors and others, and some of the techniques that you've been using over the years.
Yeah, in terms of my work with Los Angeles Unified School District, I consult with them at the district level in terms of creating the Boys of Color conferences.
Okay.
We did a series of conferences, 1 for the teachers, 1 for the parents, and then for the boys. And so what we did there, I helped craft the workshops and brought the people together who would actually, the expertise for the workshops. Also consulting on this idea on how do you teach relationship building to teachers. And then finally creating the village and building a village of people. It's an ongoing effort beyond the conferences to now bring a village of people together to mentor the boys ongoing for the rest of the year. And so with Omaha South High School, I consult with them in terms of the curriculum that I created, along with the elective course. They turned the pilot program, was so successful they turned it into an elective where they award a credit. And so I consult with the teachers. This is a 3-year elective process. It's one of the only elective courses specifically geared to young men of color in the country.
Okay.
And so I created that, and I consult with that. So my consulting expertise around young men of color goes all the way from parents. A lot of our parental workshops that we're doing in Los Angeles are in the Latino community as well, where we'll have 100% of our parents are Latino. So they have the translators. So this message and this consulting work is across the board because there's so much in terms of the achievement gap that we're experiencing with our boys. I mean, when you start, Ed, when you start taking a look at numbers, and someone might say, we're graduating 54% of African American boys.
Okay.
Well, what you just said to me is you're not graduating 46%. And what you're also saying to me is that 46%, so if you have 1,000 boys and 460 of them are not going to get a high school diploma, unless they get a GED, they're also not going to get a college degree. So when you're talking to me about real lives, what we miss in the numbers are the lives themselves and what that means to a community in terms of when you miss that large of a group. And so that's why with this consulting work is so dynamic, because we really have to talk about decreasing this gap. And we have to talk about true education reform to the point to where now we can come in and help young men understand the connectedness between education and their future financial well-being.
Great. One of the keys that you talked about this today at the 19th annual Unity Breakfast was this concept of building relationships as the real key to getting at boys of color and other students as well. What do you mean really about building relationships? We all know what the word relationship is, but when you say building relationships, what are you talking about there?
Well, if you notice, I asked a critical question at the beginning, and it was a setup question. How many people in the room are expert relationship builders? And not a hand went up. No one wanted to put themselves on the spot. Because but it's interesting when it's posed, because we all feel that we're pretty familiar with building relationships.
Right.
But the earnest, and then I posed another question. I was really a challenge, and I said, take the next year and see how often you sit across from someone who for 15 minutes strictly listens to you and doesn't want anything for themselves in that conversation. And they were like, you could see the room going, wow. Earnest relationship building is really walking more than really a mile in another person's shoes. It's becoming the experience and listening for the nuances that a person is really relaying to you in a way to where you can, when they say, can you see what I'm saying? See, a person who earnestly listens to you gets a picture of what you're saying. And so when they get that picture, now they can almost talk in we terms. When I talk to my kids, I talk in we terms. Okay, how are we approaching that? Okay, not you need to do this or you need to do that, but how are we approaching it? How are we going to get here? And so an earnest relationship, and that's the critical, especially for the teacher-student dynamic. It's the number one factor in that particular teacher-student learning paradigm is relationship building. And it's interesting because we've moved into a me society that people have got away from the lost art of relationship building. So I talk a lot about that, Ed, in terms of helping people to see. I talked about the robot, and I talked about how people are really fixed in their own idea and how they have to come out of that. And so relationship building earnestly means that I sit across from you and I earnestly seek to know who you are, what your challenges are, what you want. And then through my discussion with you, here's something funny. One of my kids, I said to my kids, your life doesn't belong to you. And, my other kids, some of the kids said, well, who does it belong to? And then when the other kid said, it belongs to everybody else. And the kid said, well, if my life belongs to everybody else, who's going to be given to me? And the same kid said, everybody else. When we began to understand that we are here to serve others, and through that service to others, we get served, then it's a lot more palatable than to think that I have to continue to give and to think I would never get. So when I service you in conversation and edify you and empower you and build you up and listen to you, and you can literally feel me be absorbed in your idea, then you compensate me by saying, oh, what about you, Wes? You see? That's where we move into earnest relationship building. That's where we take on the whole village concept and we move into a higher idea that is not selfish in its drive, but is really serving in terms of the whole community of man. And that's where earnest relationship building is so profound, and it's so edifying, empowering, and it evolves us to a higher consciousness to where we now come out of self and say, let me find out what's going on with you. So that's what the whole thing about relationship building is.
It sounds so simple, but as we know, it's probably so difficult to achieve, and it's something that we constantly have to work at and remind ourselves with all the distractions, so to speak, of the day, with technology and so forth, to work and continue to build on those relationships. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned at the program that there was kind of 4 or 5 things, other than hire you to come consult with us. There was other things that you kind of espoused that you can kind of leave us with, maybe as we're all working with youths and children, and whether boys of color or non of color, that we should kind of keep in mind. What were some of those 4 or 5 major points?
You talked about relationship building.
Okay.
To be effective in your relationship building. We talked about mentoring. Mentoring is critical. I really can't push this enough.
Okay.
In terms of, there was a documentary out about these wild bull elephants, I think in South Africa. And there was the teen elephants that had gone wild. They were killing rhinos, and they couldn't figure out what was going wrong. But they found out that the reserve that they had put these elephants in, they had got rid of the male elephants. And so as a result of that, the teen elephants went crazy and were killing, but when they brought back in the bull elephants, the males, it quelled the energy of the young elephants.
Okay.
And so mentoring is critical because what it does is not only does it give an example, sound example of what they're to aspire to be, it also brings male energy into the fold that calms down and gives and really sends a message that there is some powers here. So mentoring is very necessary, and the commitment necessary to mentor a young person has to be holistic, has to be all the way to the end. So mentoring is critical, relationship building is critical, and then as you start talking about building a village, you need a village of people that are all going to collectively and holistically move these young people to a place to where they can really see major impact, a collective impact of a village that really speaks a language. Back in our day, when we grew up, you could get whooped all the way. That was the negative aspect of the village, because you get a whooping at the front of the street. Why aren't you in school? Bam, bam, bam. Then by the time, Miss Judy has you by the ear and takes you to your mom's house, knocking on the door with your ear in her hand, then your mom's going to beat you in front of Miss. So the village was very necessary. And then finally, so you have hire me, of course, relationship building, mentoring. And then the village, and then finally, access, resources, and pathways.
Okay.
A child needs to hear that you have the access, the ability to have them gain access to a higher idea. You have the resources to facilitate that you're prepared to share, and that you have established the pathways for that child. Right now, their believability factor is so low. They've been lied to so much, so many broken promises, that by the time you come and say, hey, I'm going to change your world, they're like, right, get in line with everybody else who said that. But if they see you have earnestly the access, he can get me in. He's got the resources, and he's prepared to share. And he's got the pathways. If I'm not a college-bound type of person, he's got a trade relationship. If I am a college-bound person, he's got entry. And he's got these things. So when you talk about access, resources, and pathways, that's the fit. That rounds out the last part of it. And from there, now it's just a machine that's there to transform lives.
That was a great things for to leave us with. And it's been great having you today on the program and joining us here. This is first time in Muskegon, I believe, right?
It really is.
Okay, hopefully this won't be your last time.
No, I'm looking forward to coming back.
Yeah, Mr. Wes Hall, nationally consulting, working with Boys of Colors, nationally radio personality, author, and beyond. You're just doing fabulous and great things out there throughout this country. We encourage you to keep that up, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.